Hey YouTube, I'm Blaze, and today I've got the 4th episode of Mythbusters for you, and this is going to be the fastest way to kill a hero. This is of course going to be with infantry, because if I tested every unit in the game, that would take a horrendously long time. However, there is an opportunity for me to take a part 2 and a part 3 for reinforcements and heroes if you like it, so be sure to let me know if you want something like that. If you go on to enjoy, make sure to share the video with friends, subscribe and check out some of my other videos, as I'm sure you'll enjoy them too. So without further ado, I'm going to count down the 27 results, give you my thoughts on them, and then I'm going to display the table of my results up on the screen. And just to clarify some details, these tests will be taken for how long each weapon takes to kill Ray. So that's 750 health, which is a pretty average number, and that's my choice, but it doesn't really matter so much because it's going to directly correspond to each weapon's DPS, so it's the ranking that matters most. And if a weapon overheats before they get to kill Ray, I have calculated their predicted time as if they were on a golden cooling flush. Starting off with the 6 participants who did not finish, or basically just took an absolute age and have no chance of getting anywhere with killing hero. And firstly, the Stinger Pistol, although it does a lot of damage to heroes and is extremely annoying, it does not do it quickly, so that's straight in the bin. The turret fires burst damage, so a lot of damage, but then it waits an absolute age before shooting again, so that was binned. Then the IQA and the NTT42 for the specialist, with all those attachments and different combinations, those guys just overheat so fast. You get through multiple overheats, you've never got a chance. Even though they do great burst damage, there's lots of downtime in between, so once again, binned. And then the A280 CFE without the burst mod is once again like the IQA, even though it shoots a little faster, it's not actually that great at killing heroes at all, or even doing any damage. I think that's actually one of the grindiest things to do, is to get the 3rd attachment for the A280 CFE, because it means getting lots of kills without the burst mod, and that just doesn't happen, quite frankly. So starting us off with our actual results, at 5.8 seconds, we have the FWMB-10K, so that's the big heavy blaster, which is okay at long ranges actually, because it's got longer range than the other heavy blasters, but quite frankly all the heavy blasters are just appalling because either of their range or their damage, and this is clearly the damage. And it also overheats before you actually kill Ray, and the overheat itself takes absolute days on end, so the FWMB-10K is definitely bringing up the rear here. And you can really see how bad the FWMB-10K is when it's separated by a full second to our 19th place, which goes to the explosive sentry, and this is the sentry that fires the large explosive rounds as opposed to the practically explosive sentry, which is actually called the supercharged sentry. But anyway, this explosive sentry comes pretty low because of the explosive damage, so you can't really get much headshot multiplier in there, but also that each shot is separated by a very long downtime, and downtime means that you're not going to do very well in this test. So there you go. At 4.8, the explosive sentry at the 19th place, and at the 18th we have, for 4.7 seconds and an overheat, we have the Blug. Now this is just the regular 2-shot Blug, not very good unless of course you use the 4-shot burst, but we're going to get onto that later. And the 2-shot burst, well, it's just average. I mean, it is actually pretty good because it does do some burst damage, so if you get those headshots in there, you can kill regulars pretty quickly. But as for heroes, meh. And at 4.3 seconds, we have the Blug again, but this time explosive, once again with an overheat. And it's interesting that the explosive actually gives you almost half a second boost when it comes to killing a 750 health point hero. And then at 4.2 seconds, it's the Blug again, this time with the full burst and explosive, so still actually pretty slow, nowhere near the top of our list. It also has an overheat again, but it's a good show given that it's a burst weapon and it has explosive damage on it. Also at 4.2 we have the S5, which shouldn't be too many surprises here, long downtime in between shots because of the high recoil. And then actually we have the Vanguard, which is surprising, but obviously the long downtime in between shots cancels out the incredibly high burst damage. So yes, it's still really good for taking on heroes because you can take a shot, take a third of an enemy's hero's health, and then roll, and then do it again, whereas with an automatic weapon you can't really roll in between shots and still keep the same amount of DPS up. At the 14th place is the DC-15LE with 4.1 seconds, so only 0.1 of a second less than the Vanguard, and this is of course with the explosive shot, which means it has an overheat as well. At the 13th spot with 3.9 seconds, we actually have the Slug Vanguard, which is particularly interesting that it actually deals higher DPS than the original Vanguard, and it's better at longer ranges. However, the aiming problem is pretty big here because it does a slight drop off, it's got pretty low projectile speed, and the reticle is tiny. However, it's worth noting that if you want to take out a hero, Slug Vanguard is a better way to go. And at the 12th spot, we have the Sentry. Now, honestly, I'd expect this to be higher, as the Sentry does a lot of damage, and it can do headshot damage, as well as the fact that with a high rate of fire, it's really easy to track people, so it's definitely a good choice for taking out heroes, and we all know how annoying facing a Sentry is, especially with a melee character. However, the Sentry did come in at 3.7 seconds. Another surprise at 3.7 seconds, we have the EL-16HFE, which does a lot of headshot damage, or so I thought. Because of its slow rate of fire, I guess it's coming in at the 11th spot. Then coming in with a small jump at 3.3 seconds, we have the Blurg with the 4-burst. Now this does have an overheat, however, I think you all know that the Blurg, or at least the Blurg with the 4-burst and no explosive, is extremely powerful, especially against infantry. However, with the high health targets, I would call this a slight underperformer, definitely to what I expected, but it's pretty respectable at the 10th place. At the number 9 spot next in our top 10, we have the DC-15LE. This is at 3.2 seconds, and honestly did better than I expected it to. I think all heavy weapons are pretty rubbish, however the DC-15LE is definitely my favourite, because it's got the blend between range and damage. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the 2 7th places, which go to the A280 and the Supercharged Sentry. So that's the explosive shot Sentry basically. And the A280 does a lot of headshot damage, and I have noticed this playing it. It's pretty good. It's the Blurg for the assault class, and well, it's just solid. Same with the Supercharged Sentry, renowned for killing heroes, especially when it was OP back in the day. However, having been nerfed, it still does some pretty good damage, evidently. Then, breaking the 3-second mark at 2.9 seconds, we have the SE-44C with rapid fire. Now this is a very strong blaster, and it does a lot of damage, particularly in the head. It's the blaster that I use for the officer class, and well, very deserving of the number 6 spot. Then at 2.7 seconds and the number 5 spot, and certainly an overperformer particularly for me, it's the CR2. Now I knew the CR2 was good at close range, but I did not think it was better than the A280, and it turns out it is, by quite some way actually, and I know that's probably just me underestimating it, as a lot of you have told me that it does some serious close-up range damage. But anyway, at the number 4 spot with 2.6 seconds, we have the A280 CFE with the burst mod, and this obviously kicks out a load of damage. We all know that. As a sniper weapon, it's more of an assault weapon, but it's great, just great blaster, deserving of the number 4 spot. Which brings me on to the TL50. We all know how much damage the TL50 does at close range, even though its actual range is awful, the damage is pretty good, and at 2.5 seconds this definitely shows how good it is. In fact, this is the top blaster of all the blasters in Battlefront 2, for the infantry classes anyway, so well done TL50. And for our runner-up at 2.3 seconds, which is extremely quick, we have the Infiltration. Now, I certainly expected the Infiltration to deal a lot of damage, and quite frankly, I think it's better than the Vanguard in a lot of ways. So, yeah, pretty expected, pretty well done. And then, I promise I'm not making this up, at the number 1 spot, we have the one thing you would not have guessed would be here, and that is, no joke, the Flash Pistol. Now, occasionally, for a joke, I would use the flash pistol and just get completely destroyed. And what I realised actually is that the headshot damage is pretty good. Given that you can't aim in with it, you're not really given much opportunity to actually nail people in the head, as the flash feature is completely useless and just uses up the ability of being able to aim in. But the headshot damage on the flash pistol is actually surprisingly good, as well as the rate of fire. So actually, if you look at the numbers, it's no wonder that the flash pistol comes in here at 2.2 seconds. So certainly a few surprises there. The Vanguard you would not have expected to be so low down, and the flash pistol certainly not at number 1, but I did the maths, and I actually calculated this frame by frame, so it is actually a pretty accurate recording. so don't doubt. I've also put for reference Boba Fett's rocket barrage with the purple star cards, and you can see that's at 1.7 seconds, so there definitely are places to go. Don't worry, the flash pistol doesn't have the highest DPS in the game. And once again, if you want to see the reinforcements and heroes episode, make sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments. And just to round off, the top weapons for each class: for the assault, it's the flash pistol; for the officer, it's going to be the SE44C; for the heavy, it's going to be the TL50; and for the specialist, it's got to be the A280 CFE with the burst mod, or infiltration, but infiltration is a channel ability, so you can't use that all the time. Oh, and did I forget to mention that actually the flash pistol isn't our number one. Technically, if you have a ledge nearby, then the repulsor cannon is going to be number one because it can one-shot heroes if you ledge them, so just keep that in mind. That's going to wrap up that video. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Make sure to share this video and stay subscribed. Bye.